I never expected to wake up from a coma to discover the HOA president had bulldozed my family's historic farmhouse and built a luxury mansion on my land while I was fighting for my life. But what this power-hungry woman didn't realize was that she'd just declared war on the most feared state judge in the entire county. The last thing I remember before the accident was sitting on my porch swing, watching the sunset over the apple orchard my grandfather had planted 60 years ago. The trees were just starting to blossom, tiny white flowers appearing like stars against the darkening sky. My doctor had warned me about my high blood pressure, but I'd been too busy with court cases to properly take care of myself. The headache hit suddenly, blinding, crushing pain that sent me stumbling inside to call for help. Then, darkness. I woke up 6 weeks later in the hospital, tubes running into my arms, machines beeping steadily beside me. The stroke had nearly killed me. My daughter Emily was holding my hand when my eyes finally opened. "Dad, you're back," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been so worried." The recovery was slow, frustrating. Days turned into weeks as I relearned to walk, to feed myself, to speak without slurring. All I could think about was getting back home. "There's something I need to tell you," Emily said one afternoon, her voice tense in a way that immediately put me on alert. Despite my foggy brain, 25 years on the bench had taught me to recognize when bad news was coming. "It's about the house." I struggled to sit up. "What about it?" Emily looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It's gone, Dad. The Sunny Pines HOA. They tore it down while you were unconscious." The words didn't make sense. Our family home had stood for over a century, passed down through 4 generations. "That's not possible," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're not even part of their HOA." Emily pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she showed me photos that made my heart stop. Where our white farmhouse once stood was now a massive construction site. Bulldozers crawled across what used to be my grandmother's garden. Foundation frames marked the footprint of some enormous new structure. "They're claiming our property was abandoned and hazardous after you were hospitalized," Emily explained, her voice breaking. "They fast-tracked some kind of emergency demolition order through the county while you were unconscious." I felt my blood pressure rising dangerously, the heart monitor beside my bed beeping faster. "Who authorized this?" I demanded. Emily's expression hardened. "Victoria Reynolds. She became HOA president 3 months ago. She's been trying to expand Sunny Pines into our area for years." The name was familiar. A wealthy real estate developer who'd appeared in my courtroom more than once, always with expensive lawyers, who tried to intimidate their way through cases. She knew I was in the hospital. Emily nodded grimly. Everyone did. It was in the local paper. "Dad," I tried to stop them, but their lawyers kept saying I had no legal authority since my name isn't on the deed. I closed my eyes, struggling to process what I was hearing. The farmhouse where I'd grown up, where I'd raised my own family, where I'd planned to retire, gone. And in its place, Victoria Reynolds was building. What exactly? What are they constructing? I asked, dreading the answer. "A mansion," Emily replied, scrolling to another photo. "Victoria's calling it the crown jewel of Sunny Pines. She's planning to live there herself." The irony was almost too much to bear. Victoria Reynolds, who'd stood in my courtroom just last year trying to justify her company's predatory lending practices, was now building her dream home on my land that had been in my family since before her precious HOA even existed. I felt something shift inside me. Not physical pain, but a cold, calculated determination I recognized from my most difficult cases. "Help me up," I told Emily, disconnecting the heart monitor despite the alarm it triggered. "Dad, you can't leave. You're still recovering," she protested. but I could see in her eyes that she understood. Some violations of justice cannot wait for proper recovery time. I'm not going to confront her yet, I assured my daughter as a nurse rushed in to check the alarm. But I need to see what's happened with my own eyes, and then I need my files. The nurse tried to convince me to stay, but 20 minutes later I was signing discharge papers against medical advice. My legs were still unsteady as Emily helped me into her car. "Take me home," I said quietly. "Or at least to where home used to be." The drive through familiar streets felt surreal. Neighbors waved hesitantly as we passed, their expressions a mix of sympathy and curiosity. When we turned onto my road, I almost told Emily to turn around. I wasn't ready for this. But then, through the trees, I saw it. A massive 3-story structure rising from what used to be my modest farmland, its imposing columns and expansive windows a monument to excess and entitlement. Construction workers swarmed around it like ants, putting finishing touches on Victoria Reynolds's dream home. My land, my property. A security guard stepped forward as Emily parked along the road. "This is private property," he said, not recognizing me after my weeks in the hospital. I struggled out of the car, leaning heavily on a cane. "You're right," I replied, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "It is private property. It's my private property." Before the guard could respond, a sleek black SUV pulled up, and Victoria Reynolds herself stepped out, dressed impeccably, in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her perfectly highlighted hair caught the sunlight as she strode toward us, her face a mask of practiced concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Judge Harrison," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I heard you'd been released from the hospital. How wonderful to see you recovering." Emily's hand tightened on my arm, steadying me. "What have you done, Victoria?" I asked, gesturing to the monstrosity behind her. She smiled, all perfect teeth and calculated charm. "I've improved. The neighborhood, of course. Your old house was becoming quite an eyesore, all those medical emergencies, ambulances disrupting the peace. The HOA board unanimously approved this beautification project." My blood boiled at her casual dismissal of my family home, but decades on the bench had taught me to control my emotions, to think strategically. "I was never part of your HOA," I said calmly. "My property predates Sunny Pines by 60 years. Victoria's smile didn't falter. "Well, that's where things get interesting. During your unfortunate medical situation, the county approved our petition to incorporate your land into our development. All very legal, I assure you." She pulled out her phone, checking the time with exaggerated concern. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have contractors to supervise. The housewarming party is this weekend." As she turned to leave, I called after her. "Victoria." She paused, looking back with an expression of mild annoyance. "You might want to postpone that party," I said quietly. She laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Oh, and why would I do that?" I straightened to my full height, ignoring the pain in my recovering body. "Because by this weekend, you'll be facing charges for fraud, illegal demolition, property theft, and misappropriation of land." Her eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication that my words had affected her. "Empty threats from a sick old man," she replied, her voice hardening. "You should focus on your recovery, Judge. Your time of authority has passed." With that, she walked away, her heels clicking on the new stone pathway that cut through what used to be my vegetable garden. Emily helped me back to the car, worry etched across her face. "Dad, what are we going to do?" She has the entire HOA board behind her, plus half the county officials in her pocket. I watched Victoria's retreating figure, a plan already forming in my mind. "Take me to the storage unit," I instructed Emily. "The one where I keep my case files." My daughter looked confused but nodded. "You think there's something there that can help us?" I smiled for the first time since waking up in the hospital. Victoria Reynolds has appeared before me 6 times in the last decade. Each time she walked away thinking she'd won, but I never trusted her. I started keeping a separate file. The storage unit was small, climate-controlled to protect decades of paperwork. With Emily's help, I located the box labeled simply Reynolds. Inside were records of every interaction I'd had with Victoria in my professional capacity, along with notes about suspected improprieties that never quite rose to the level of actionable offenses. But more importantly, it contained the original survey maps of my property from 1937, notarized and certified, with clear boundary markings that no HOA expansion could legally override. "Dad, these are incredible," Emily said, scanning the documents, "but will they be enough?" I pulled out one more folder, this one containing something I'd never shown anyone. Evidence of a potentially massive fraud scheme involving Victoria Reynolds and 3 county commissioners. The case had been settled out of court 5 years ago, the record sealed at the request of the commissioners. But as the presiding judge, I had maintained copies of everything. "This," I said, holding up the folder, "is our insurance policy." Over the next 3 days, Emily and I worked tirelessly from her small apartment. I called in favors from colleagues still on the bench, contacted the State Attorney General's office with anonymous tips about irregularities in the demolition permits, and instructed my personal attorney to prepare an emergency injunction. My strength returned with each passing hour, fueled by righteous indignation and the determination to see justice served. Victoria's housewarming party was scheduled for Saturday evening, a lavish affair designed to showcase her new mansion to the county's elite. I watched through binoculars from Emily's car as guests in formal attire arrived, valets parking luxury vehicles along the curved driveway that had replaced my apple orchard. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" Emily asked nervously. "Shouldn't we wait for the court order?" I shook my head, adjusting my tie. 25 years as a judge had taught me that sometimes justice needs a little dramatic flair to truly make its point. "The papers will be served first thing Monday morning, but I want Victoria to see my face when she realizes what's coming." We walked slowly toward the mansion, my cane tapping against the paved walkway that now cut through my property. Security guards at the entrance hesitated when they saw us. I wasn't on the guest list, but few people had the courage to turn away a state judge, even one who looked like he'd just left the hospital. The interior of Victoria's mansion was as ostentatious as I'd expected: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, priceless artwork displayed like trophies. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. And there, holding court in the center of what used to be my living room, stood Victoria Reynolds, resplendent in a red designer gown, laughing with a group of admirers. Her eyes widened when she spotted me making my way through the crowd. For just a moment, her perfect composure slipped, revealing something close to panic before she masked it with a practiced smile. "Judge Harrison," she exclaimed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "What an unexpected surprise. I didn't realize you were well enough to attend social functions." The subtle emphasis on my illness was deliberate, a reminder to everyone present that I was diminished, weakened. She thought she was establishing dominance. She was wrong. "I wouldn't have missed this for the world, Victoria," I replied, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "It's not every day I get to see the inside of a house built illegally on stolen land." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victoria's smile became brittle, her knuckles white around her champagne glass. "Perhaps you're still confused from your medical ordeal," she suggested, stepping closer. "All the permits are in order. Everything is completely legal." I nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, permits obtained while I was unconscious, based on falsified documents claiming my property was abandoned. Quite clever." Her eyes darted around the room, calculating how to contain the damage. "Judge Harrison is still recovering," she announced to the watching crowd. Perhaps he should sit down, or better yet, let me call you a car to take you home. This is my home, I replied, my voice hardening. Or rather, it sits on land that has belonged to my family for 4 generations. Land that was never legally transferred to you or your HOA. Victoria's patience snapped. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my still weak muscles, and pulled me toward a side room. Let's discuss this privately, she hissed. Emily started forward, but I gave her a reassuring nod. I wanted Victoria alone when she learned what was coming. The moment the door closed behind us, Victoria's facade disappeared entirely. Listen to me very carefully, old man, she snarled, her face inches from mine. I don't care what documents you think you have. This property is mine now. The house is built. The papers are filed. It's done. I leaned on my cane, watching her with the calm detachment I'd perfected over decades on the bench. Are you familiar with the case of Reynolds Development versus Westbrook County? I asked conversationally. Victoria frowned, momentarily thrown by the change in topic. Of course, my company was fully exonerated. I smiled thinly. Were you? Or did 3 county commissioners suddenly drop their investigations after private meetings that occurred in violation of sunshine laws? Her face paled slightly. That case was sealed. I was the presiding judge, Victoria. Nothing is ever truly sealed from me. Especially not when I suspected you were bribing public officials even then. I took a step toward her, ignoring the pain in my legs. Now here's what's going to happen. On Monday morning, you will be served with an emergency injunction freezing all activity related to this property. By Monday afternoon, the State Attorney General's office will have reopened the Westbrook investigation based on new evidence that recently came to light. And by Monday evening, 3 different news outlets will be running stories about how Victoria Reynolds bulldozed a stroke victim's family home while he fought for his life in the hospital. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. You're bluffing, she whispered. But there was no conviction in her voice. You think you know how power works in this county? I continued. You believe money and connections can overcome everything. But you've never faced someone like me, someone with nothing left to lose and the legal knowledge to dismantle your entire empire. Victoria's face contorted with rage. Get out! She shouted, shoving me hard enough that I stumbled, backward, nearly falling. The door burst open behind me, revealing concerned party guests who had heard her outburst. Emily rushed to my side, steadying me. Did everyone see that? I asked calmly, looking around at the shocked faces of the county's elite, bankers, lawyers, developers, and several members of the county commission. Victoria Reynolds just physically assaulted a state judge recovering from a stroke in a house built illegally on my property. Victoria realized too late the trap she'd walked into. Her carefully cultivated image of sophisticated professionalism shattered in an instant of uncontrolled rage, witnessed by the very people whose respect she craved. This isn't over, she hissed, but her threat sounded hollow even to her own ears. I smiled, feeling stronger than I had since before my stroke. You're right about that, I agreed. In fact, it's just beginning. Emily helped me through the crowd of whispering guests past Victoria's security team who suddenly seemed uncertain who they should be protecting. Outside in the cool evening air, I took a deep breath. The apple trees my grandfather had planted were gone. The garden my grandmother had tended destroyed. But the land remained, my land, and I would reclaim it. What happens now, Dad? Emily asked as she helped me into her car. I watched the mansion, my future courthouse exhibit A, glowing with expensive lighting against the night sky. Now we let the legal system do what it does best, I replied. We bring justice to those who think they're above it. 3 months later, I stood on the same spot, watching as construction crews began the careful work of dismantling Victoria Reynolds' illegal mansion. The court case had been faster than anyone expected, in part because Victoria's HOA board members quickly turned against her once the evidence was presented. They'd had no idea she had bulldozed my house while I was in a coma. She'd told them I had sold the property before my stroke, and that the demolition was part of the sales agreement. One by one, they testified against her, desperate to avoid being implicated in her schemes. The county commissioner who had approved the emergency demolition permit resigned in disgrace after emails surfaced, showing Victoria had promised him a lucrative consulting position in exchange for his cooperation. Victoria herself was facing multiple criminal charges, her real estate license suspended pending investigation. Judge Harrison? I turned to see Maria Lopez, the new HOA president, approaching hesitantly. Unlike Victoria, Maria was a long-time resident who genuinely cared about the community. The board wanted me to give you this. She handed me an envelope containing a formal apology from the Sunny Pines HOA, along with a substantial check for damages. It's not enough to replace what was lost, Maria acknowledged, but we hope it helps with rebuilding your home. I thanked her, appreciating the gesture. The money wasn't important. My lawsuit against Victoria personally would cover the financial damages. What mattered was that the community was acknowledging the wrong that had been done. As Maria walked away, Emily joined me, carrying blueprints for our new house. Not a replica of the old farmhouse that could never be truly replaced, but something that honored its memory while looking toward the future. The architect says, "We can save some of the foundation stones from the original house," she explained excitedly. "And look, he designed a special courtyard where we can replant apple trees just like Grandpa's." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before the stroke. Victoria had thought my illness made me vulnerable, an easy target for her ambitions. She never understood that some people grow stronger through adversity, more determined when faced with injustice. The rebuilding process was slow, much like my recovery from the stroke. But new memories were being created. Neighbors who had once been intimidated by Victoria's HOA now stopped by with housewarming gifts and offers to help with the garden. Emily decided to move back permanently, taking a job at the local law school to be closer to me. And every evening I sat on my new porch swing, watching the sunset over newly planted apple trees that would someday grow as tall and strong as the ones my grandfather had tended. Victoria thought she was building a mansion, a monument to her own importance. Instead, she had inadvertently helped me build something far more valuable. A community united against bullying and corruption. A legal precedent that would protect other vulnerable homeowners. And a renewed appreciation for the land that had been in my family for generations.